The night Ava Sterling lost everything, Manhattan was glowing like it was celebrating her humiliation. The rain hit the glass walls of the rooftop restaurant, while investors clinked glasses and smiled at the man who had just stolen her dream. Ava stood near the exit shaking as she read the message on her phone. Board vote complete. Ethan Reed is now CEO. The same Ethan who once held her hands and promised forever looked at her without guilt. He leaned close and whispered, "You were never meant to lead, Ava, you were meant to support." The laughter around her felt louder than the thunder outside. In that moment her heart broke, but her spirit did not. Ava Sterling was born in Brooklyn, raised by hardworking parents who taught her that in America nothing comes easy. Her father drove subway trains, her mother worked double shifts at a public hospital. Ava studied hard, graduated from Columbia University, and built her tech startup from a small apartment in Queens. She worked nights coding her platform called Rise Grid, designed to help small American businesses survive in the digital world. She met Ethan at a startup networking event in Soho. He was confident, charming, well-connected. He believed in her idea, or at least that is what she thought. Together they pitched investors, built momentum, and turned her dream into a fast-growing company. Ava trusted him with shares, strategy, and her heart. As the company grew, Ethan changed. He began attending meetings alone, forming secret alliances, convincing the board that Ava was too emotional to lead. She ignored the warning signs because she loved him. She believed loyalty mattered more than titles. Then one afternoon, she walked into the conference room and saw new contracts. Her equity reduced, her title changed, her voice silenced. Ethan told her it was just optics, but weeks later the board officially voted him as CEO, her own company taken from her while she was still standing inside it. The days after were brutal. Her email access removed, her decisions ignored. Articles praised Ethan as a visionary, while Ava was described as a creative contributor. Social media questioned her strength. Investors stopped answering her calls. She sat in her small apartment staring at the skyline of New York, feeling invisible. One night, she looked in the mirror with swollen eyes and whispered, "Is this really the end?" That question became her turning point. Instead of begging for her old position, she resigned completely. She walked out of Rise Grid with nothing but her laptop and dignity. She spent weeks reflecting, learning, reading biographies of American entrepreneurs who failed before they won. She realized her mistake was not trusting Ethan, it was underestimating herself. She had built a company once, she could build something greater again. Ava started over from a co-working space in Brooklyn with borrowed money and sleepless determination. She created a new platform called Urban Rise, focused on empowering women-owned small businesses across America. She coded during the day, delivered food at night. To pay rent, she cut off negative voices. She trained her mind like an athlete trains for the Olympics. She woke up at 5 every morning, ran across the Brooklyn Bridge, and reminded herself pain is temporary, purpose is permanent. Months turned into a year. Her new platform gained traction. Real women shared stories of growth. Because of her tools, media outlets slowly noticed her authenticity, attracted investors who believed in her vision, not just profits. This time, she kept control. She built a team that respected her leadership. She became stronger, calmer, strategic. The girl who once cried on a subway bench now spoke confidently at business conferences in Chicago, Los Angeles, and Dallas. Meanwhile, Rise Grid began collapsing under Ethan's leadership. His aggressive decisions hurt small clients. His ego replaced empathy. Investors grew concerned. Articles that once praised him now questioned him. The same board that doubted Ava searched for solutions, but she was already building something bigger. 3 years after her humiliation, Ava stood again on a rooftop in Manhattan, but this time it was her celebration. Urban Rise had just crossed $100 million in valuation. Her parents stood beside her with tears of pride. Flashing cameras captured the moment. A reporter asked, "What kept you going when everyone doubted you?" Ava smiled calmly and said, "They laughed because they thought I was finished. I stayed silent because I was rebuilding." The next morning, headlines read, "Ava Sterling builds million-dollar empire in New York." She did not seek revenge with anger. She chose success. As her answer, she proved that betrayal can become fuel, humiliation can become strength, loss can become direction. Ethan watched her interview on television from his quiet apartment. No longer CEO, no longer celebrated. He finally understood that leadership is not about power, it is about purpose. Ava looked at the sunrise over New York and whispered to herself, "Never again will I shrink to make someone else comfortable." Her journey taught one powerful truth: sometimes God removes you from the table because you are meant to build your own. If you have ever been doubted, betrayed, or laughed at, remember this moment. Remember Ava Sterling. The world may close doors in your face, but disciplined belief and relentless action can build new doors stronger than the old ones. Your pain is not your ending, it is your beginning. Subscribe to Revenge Water Official for more powerful stories. After Ava Sterling walked away from the company she built, the silence was louder than the betrayal. New York did not slow down for her heartbreak. The subway still roared beneath the streets. Times Square still flashed bright lights, and people still chased their dreams. But Ava felt like she was standing still while the world moved forward. Without her title, without her team, without her identity as CEO, she felt stripped of everything she once worked for. For weeks, she woke up at 7 out of habit, then remembered she had nowhere to go. No board meetings, no investor calls, no strategy sessions, just an empty Brooklyn apartment and unanswered questions. She scrolled through business news and saw Ethan Reed on the cover of a major magazine, smiling confidently under the headline, "The Young Visionary Transforming Digital Commerce." Her chest tightened, but she refused to cry. One afternoon her father visited. He sat at the small kitchen table wearing his MTA uniform and looked at her carefully. He did not ask about the company. He did not mention Ethan. He simply said, "I drove trains for 30 years, Ava. You know what I learned. The train only stops when the driver decides it stops." She looked at him confused. He continued, "Sometimes the track ahead looks dark. Sometimes it feels like you hit a wall. But if you still have control of the engine, you keep moving." That sentence stayed with her. That night, Ava opened her laptop not to check old emails, but to write new ideas. She studied the market deeply. She researched trends across American small businesses from Texas to California. She read forums where women entrepreneurs shared struggles about funding, discrimination, and lack of mentorship. She realized something powerful: there were thousands of talented women in the United States who never received support because investors preferred polished Ivy League men with loud voices. Ava had lived that reality. Her pain started transforming into purpose. She wrote a new vision statement: empower women-owned businesses with digital tools, funding access, and community power. She named the platform Urban Rise. This time, she moved differently. She did not rush to investors. She did not chase validation. She built quietly from a rented desk inside a co-working space in Dumbo, Brooklyn, surrounded by freelancers and dreamers. Every morning, she arrived before sunrise carrying her laptop and a cup of black coffee. She coded for hours, refining features, testing designs, building systems from scratch. Money was tight. She sold her designer bags. She canceled streaming subscriptions. She even drove for a ride-share service at night, picking up strangers from JFK Airport just to cover rent. Sometimes passengers complained, sometimes they ignored her, but none of them knew they were sitting in the car of a future empire builder. There were nights she parked near the Brooklyn Bridge and stared at the skyline. The same city that once embarrassed her now became her motivation. She whispered to herself, "I will not let this city defeat me." Slowly, Urban Rise began to take shape. It offered affordable website templates, marketing tools, financial literacy courses, and access to a growing online community of women founders. Ava personally answered emails from beta users. She listened to their stories. A single mother in Chicago trying to grow her bakery, a Latina fashion designer in Miami struggling with online sales, a veteran in Arizona launching a fitness brand. Their gratitude fueled her. Months passed and exhaustion tested her faith. There were days when coding errors erased hours of work. There were moments when she questioned whether anyone would ever invest in her again. Doubt tried to creep back into her mind, whispering, "Maybe Ethan was right, maybe you were never meant to lead." But this time she fought back. She began waking up at 5 every morning to run across the Brooklyn Bridge. The cold wind hitting her face reminded her she was alive. She listened to motivational podcasts about resilience, American entrepreneurs who failed publicly before succeeding privately. She trained her mind like an athlete trains muscle: repetition, discipline, consistency. One afternoon, while presenting Urban Rise at a small startup event in Manhattan, she noticed a woman in the audience. Watching her closely after the presentation, the woman approached and introduced herself as Danielle Brooks, a partner at a female-led venture Capital firm Danielle said, "I have been following your story, Ava. What happened to you is unfair, but what you are building now is powerful." For the first time since the betrayal, Ava felt seen. Danielle did not offer immediate money, she offered mentorship. She challenged Ava to refine her revenue model, strengthen her pitch, and protect her equity structure. They met weekly at a small cafe near Wall Street, reviewing numbers and strategy. Ava absorbed every lesson like a sponge. Meanwhile, news about Rise Grid began shifting. Articles questioned leadership decisions. Customers complained about poor service. Employees posted anonymous reviews criticizing toxic culture. Ethan appeared confident in interviews, but internally the company was bleeding. Ava heard rumors, but she stayed focused. She refused to build her future around someone else's failure. Her revenge would not be destruction, it would be elevation. After 1 year of relentless work, Urban Rise reached 10,000 active users. The community grew organically across different states. Women shared testimonials on social media, calling Ava a symbol of resilience. A business podcast invited her for an interview. She hesitated at first, fearing public exposure, but then accepted. During the interview, the host asked, "What did betrayal teach you?" Ava paused, then answered, "Betrayal taught me that sometimes losing your seat at the table forces you to build a bigger table." The clip went viral. Investors started reaching out, but this time she negotiated from strength, not desperation. She maintained majority ownership. She structured fair terms. She built a board that respected her voice. Workshops in Los Angeles, Atlanta, Houston, and Seattle. Ava traveled constantly, speaking to rooms full of aspiring entrepreneurs. She shared raw truths about heartbreak, humiliation, and rebuilding. She did not hide the pain. She used it as proof that survival is possible. Her mother attended one of her speaking events and cried in the front row as the audience gave Ava a standing ovation. After the event, her mother hugged her tightly and whispered, "They tried to break you, but they only sharpened you." Meanwhile, Rise Grid stock value dropped significantly. Investors pressured Ethan for solutions. Employees began leaving. Internal conflicts surfaced. The same board that once removed Ava now faced consequences of their decision. One evening, Ethan sent Ava an email requesting a meeting. She stared at the notification silently. The man who once dismissed her leadership now wanted conversation. Ava closed her laptop calmly. She was no longer chasing closure. She was building legacy. The girl who once sat crying on a subway bench was now leading a movement across America. Her confidence no longer depended on titles or approval. It was rooted in experience, discipline, and unshakable belief. The email from Ethan stayed unread for 3 days. Not because Ava Sterling was afraid, but because she finally understood something powerful. Silence is strength when you no longer need validation. Urban Rise had just signed its biggest partnership yet with a national retail chain that wanted to onboard thousands of women-owned brands onto their digital marketplace. The deal would push the company valuation past $100 million. Ava stood inside her glass office overlooking Manhattan, holding the contract in her hands. The same city that once watched her humiliation was now witnessing her rise. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan Reed, requesting a meeting in person. This time she opened the message. "Ava, we need to talk. There are things you deserve to hear." Ethan. She stared at the skyline for a long moment. 3 years ago, she would have rushed to respond, hoping for apology, closure, maybe even justice. Now she felt nothing. No anger. No revenge. No pain. Only power. She agreed to meet. They chose a quiet restaurant in Tribeca, the same neighborhood where they once celebrated early funding rounds, the same streets where he promised they would change the tech industry together. Ethan looked different. Less confident. More tired. The arrogance in his eyes replaced by stress. Rise Grid was collapsing. Public criticism increased. Investors were pulling out. Employees were resigning. The board had begun searching for a replacement CEO. When Ava walked in, the entire energy shifted. She was calm, composed, elegant, in a tailored navy suit. Her presence alone commanded respect. Ethan stood up awkwardly. "You look successful," he said softly. "I am," she replied calmly. There was no bitterness in her tone, and that unsettled him more than anger ever could. He cleared his throat. "I made mistakes, Ava. I thought I could handle it alone. I thought you were holding the company back." She looked at him directly. "No, Ethan, you were afraid I would outgrow you." The words hit harder than any accusation. He looked down. The board wants you back. He finally admitted they believe you can save Rise Grid. There it was. The full circle moment. 3 years ago, they voted her out claiming she was too emotional, too soft, too inexperienced. Now they wanted her to rescue what they destroyed. Ava leaned back in her chair. You did not remove me because I was incapable. She said you removed me because I was powerful. Ethan had no response. She continued calmly. When you took my title, you thought you won. When they laughed at me, you thought I was finished, but you forgot something. She paused, letting the silence grow heavy. I built that company once. I can build anything. The waiter passed by, unaware he was witnessing the final chapter of a silent war. Ethan looked desperate. Will you come back? Ava smiled gently but firmly. No. The single word carried years of growth. I do not rebuild broken houses anymore, she continued. I build new cities. That night, Ava walked out of the restaurant without looking back. The air felt different, not heavy, not painful, free. Weeks later, Urban Rise officially crossed $100 million in valuation. National media covered her journey. Headlines read, from betrayed founder to industry leader, women across America applaud Ava Sterling. She stood on stage at a massive entrepreneurship summit in Chicago in front of thousands of people, lights shining, cameras flashing, applause echoing. She began her speech quietly. 3 years ago, I lost everything. The crowd listened in silence. I was told I was too emotional to lead, too soft to build an empire, too weak to survive betrayal. She paused. They laughed at me. You could feel the tension in the room. Then her voice grew stronger. But here is what they did not understand. Pain is fuel. Humiliation is training. Rejection is redirection. The audience erupted in applause. She shared the nights she cried alone, the shifts she drove strangers around New York just to pay rent, the mornings she ran across the Brooklyn Bridge fighting doubt, the discipline that replaced fear, the mindset shift that changed everything. You do not win by destroying the people who hurt you, she said. You win by becoming so successful their opinion no longer matters. In the front row, her parents held hands with tears in their eyes. Back in New York, Rise Grid officially filed for bankruptcy. Ethan resigned quietly. The same investors who once dismissed Ava now praised her resilience. But Ava did not celebrate their downfall. Her revenge was never about revenge. It was about proving to herself that she was unstoppable. Urban Rise expanded internationally, supporting women-owned businesses in Canada and Europe. Ava launched scholarship programs for young female entrepreneurs from low-income communities. She built mentorship networks. She invested in startups led by women of color. She became the leader she once needed. One evening, she returned to the subway station at 42nd Street, the same bench where she once cried. After losing her company, she sat there quietly watching strangers rush past. This time there were no tears, only gratitude. She whispered softly to herself, "You survived." A young woman sitting nearby recognized her from social media. "Are you Ava Sterling?" she asked nervously. Ava smiled. "Yes." The girl said, "I almost gave up on my business after my partner betrayed me, but your story kept me going." Ava felt her heart swell. That moment meant more than any valuation. She realized something profound. Success is not money. Success is impact. As she walked back into the busy streets of Manhattan, she looked up at the skyline glowing against the night sky. They laughed at Ava Sterling. But they did not know she was being built by the storm. If you are watching this and you feel betrayed, humiliated, doubted, remember this. The same people who question your strength today will one day question how you became so powerful. Do not beg for a seat at a table that doubts you. Build your own empire. Stand tall. Stay disciplined. Turn pain into power. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is massive, undeniable success. Subscribe to Revenge Water Official for more powerful stories.